Here's how to make sure your user interviews aren't a waste of time. User interviews are conversations between UX researchers and users in order to understand a target audience's needs, wants, and behaviors. But many designers either underuse or overinvest in these interviews, which is a problem because when the scope of an interview doesn't match the project's needs, you either get shallow insights or waste resources. So let's see how these 4 tips can help you deal with that. First, you should match the scale of your project. Not every project needs a full-scale monitored user study because those get expensive. And unless you're working on a big project with a huge budget, by the time you're done setting up eye tracking, session analytics, and user monitoring, you've probably burned through all of your allocated funds. So, for a quick feedback or internal testing, a quick chat at the office or maybe a call online might just do the trick. Because think about it, for a huge project, you might invest in high fidelity studies. But for a small prototype, you gotta keep it simple. And one good practice to keep in mind is to make sure that your call or chat with the user happens right after they've interacted with your product, because that's when everything is still fresh in their minds. Second, you have to ask the right questions. The best insights come from open-ended questions. So instead of asking those that will get you a yes or a no answer, instead you should try asking your users questions like, can you walk me through your thought process while using this specific product or feature? What was the most frustrating part of this experience and why? How does this tool compare to others you've used for the same tasks? And what were you expecting to happen when you did this specific action as part of the process? These type of questions encourage storytelling and reveal user pain points and desires. But you have to remember, it's not about getting the perfect answer, it's about sparking conversations to get you those aha moments. Third, you should set a clear structure. Your interview structure is super important because how you start the study sets the tone, and you want to make sure that everyone is comfortable. So, you start by building a relationship with your user. Simple introductions, outlining the interview's purpose, and a bit of small talk can make sure to ease everyone's nerves. Then you get to the main bit, where everyone gets their tasks. You want to make sure to have a couple of scenarios prepared, and make sure you encourage everyone to think out loud. That's super important. But you have to make sure that moderators don't get too involved unless users really need it, because everything has to happen organically or the interview loses its purpose. And finally, you have a debriefing where the users talk about their experiences and maybe even fill out a survey before finally wrapping everything up. But of course, this is just one example because when you match the scope of the project, you might just cut all of this out. But a well-structured session helps guide the conversation and make sure you hit your key topics without getting too off track. Fourth, you have to have conversations right away. Interviews over email will never be as effective as real-time conversations because that's where you catch the finer details. But the way you have these conversations are even more important. One of the biggest mistakes an interviewer can make is to talk more than the user. Your role is to listen, not lecture, and to let everything unfold naturally because it's while listening that you'll pick up on the challenges that users face. And you have to be careful with bias. Now, everyone has their own thoughts and opinions on how certain things should go, but if you steer the conversations towards your own assumptions, you end up with misleading insights, misinformed design decisions, and products that don't actually help the user. So stick to open-ended questions and focus on listening to your user. If you found these tips useful, make sure to subscribe to LogRocket for more UX design tips.